Hey, all right, let's do this. What's up, everybody? Welcome again to the Friday morning freestyle. This morning, we were supposed to have Dr. Bobby Henry in studio, but he had to fly out on an important trip. So we found my friend Keith Bowering. Let's bring him in. What's up?
Morning, everyone.
What's up, Keith?
Well, another Friday morning.
Uh huh. So you were on the show, I would say, 6 months ago.
Something like that, yeah.
And we talked quite a bit about your story. But before we jump into that, you're doing some drug testing and things at festivals around Saskatchewan, or are you going outside of that?
Just in Saskatchewan.
Uh-huh.
And I believe the appropriate term is drug checking.
Drug
Because
checking.
testers are just people who
Yeah,
sample drugs. Yeah,
good.
yeah. We're doing drug checking in the formal
Okay.
sense
Language
of
is
it.
important.
It is a little bit important sometimes.
Okay. So, yeah, if I say anything wrong along the way, don't be afraid to correct me. So, I'm interested, and I mean, I know why you do this, but I think it's an interesting reason, and I think you've had an interesting path to get to where you are. You were a program guy, and
hmm
maybe you still do go to meetings now and again.
Not very much, no.
No, okay. So, but there was a time in your life where you were like, abstinence is the only way,
Yep.
for me, and maybe you thought maybe for other people as well. I know when I was early in my recovery, I thought everyone needed to be abstinence to find meaning in their life. Was there
Yeah,
ever a time
I
like that?
did about 9 years of abstinence.
Uh-huh.
And then 2019, I had a shift.
Mm-hmm.
And here I am now.
Yeah. So what was that shift like? I mean, did it go all the way from one end of the spectrum to the other overnight, or how did it
Over a
happen?
weekend, essentially.
Okay.
Um, so I'd been involved in festivals, doing festival things, recovery-based festival things, 12-step meetings and workshops and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I was already kind of involved. Um, and then we had an accidental pregnancy. And I was 45 with an incoming baby, and I was like freaking out.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was like, what do I do? So I couldn't go to my typical yearly festival.
Mm-hmm.
I ended up going to a different festival. And then all of this stemmed from there.
So let's unpack that a little bit more here. Oh, good morning, Twinkle. Good to see you this morning. Thanks for joining in. Then you were organizing recovery type festivals. I remember you would organize like trips to Ness Creek
Yes,
for
yeah.
the
So
for the
essentially
recovery
what
community.
happened was I was working with the Ness Creek safe space or safe haven, they call it. And we were just doing 12-step meetings. So every day we would do a 12-step meeting and
At the
then
festival.
at the festival, yeah.
Hmm.
And that was our whole job. That was the entire gimmick. And I did that for like 3 or 4 years before it really snowballed.
That brings to mind an interesting idea about what it was like hosting 12-step meetings in the middle of a of a
A
of,
hippie
of
festival.
a hippie festival. Did you ever catch any
Um,
like flack for it? Like, did you ever get made fun
no, there
of
was
or
never any flack for it.
yeah?
It was only moderately ever attended.
Mm-hmm.
Traditionally, like if you can pull 8 people for a meeting,
Mm-hmm.
like you're doing good,
Mm-hmm.
right? And Nest Creek, to their credit, we still provide those 12-step meetings daily. They're
Like
still available. Yeah,
you
currently we facilitate them. Yeah, yeah.
okay. So
I don't facilitate them myself. I
mhm,
have someone come,
mhm,
and then it's like a workshop position.
mhm.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit more then about your now you said you were going to go to one festival but you ended up at another festival and then you had some sort of awakening at that festival. Like what
Um,
was that? What happened? Tell us.
Yeah, so I opted to go to this other festival. So instead of going to the hippie tree planter festival, I went to a full EDM festival,
Uh-huh.
and I just volunteered in their safe space, and I was like I could do so much better. Was kind of the feeling, right?
Yeah.
Um, but I got in really tight with the promoters, and I was just like, hey, like, can I do more? Because
Mhm.
they'd asked me like, hey, do you want to facilitate our safe space? They call it the safety couch.
Mhm.
Because their base couch is their production company.
Okay.
So they call it the safety couch. Everyone's got a different name for their safe space, but they all try and emulate the same basic ideas, like somewhere you can go if you're tripping balls
Mhm.
or access supplies or whatever.
Mhm.
So I said to the promoter, I was just like, hey, listen, I would like to do more. And she said, you could do as much or as little as you want. Run wild with it.
Mm-hmm.
So I ran wild with it, and it has snowballed into this big thing that I do now.
Mm-hmm. So were you still maintaining abstinence when you said you were going to go to one festival and then you went to another
No, I did some psychedelics at that festival.
at the EDM festival?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I did some psychedelics.
Mm-hmm.
I ate some acid. I did it a couple nights. I just had a good weekend, right?
Did did
I did all the things that I would have normally partook in before I went into recovery.
mm-hmm.
Um,
Did you feel like you were throwing your recovery away?
no,
No.
no.
Okay.
My ego was no longer attached to the number. And I knew once my ego would let go of the I have 9 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then I'd be free to evolve it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And I was at that point, right? Like I wasn't attached to my clean time. I wasn't active in recovery,
Mm-hmm.
um,
Recovery.
in meetings.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was just like it happened. And then so my friend wrote back with me and was like, "Are you okay? Like you just did drugs this weekend?" I expected me to have like a whole meltdown. And I came back from that festival ready to have a baby. I was like, "Let's go. I'm ready." Like everything shifted, and I was stable and mentally
You didn't
capable of having the baby
you
and
didn't go
being
down a
present.
rabbit hole. You
Yeah,
weren't like psychedelics all
there
the
was no
time.
like I'm just gonna
Yeah. Yeah.
throw my whole life away, right? Like
Yeah.
it was a shift, and I realized that psychedelics can do great things for you.
Of course. Yeah.
At that point, I started looking at microdosing mushrooms, and we went through a whole big thing. And
Who's we?
well, me,
Yeah.
but like I always sounded off people, right? So instead of just being like I'm going to eat mushrooms,
Yeah.
like I went to the people who were like at the forefront of this movement and was like, let's talk dosing, let's talk this, let's talk that.
Mm-hmm.
What I found with the psychedelic community is nobody wants to talk about dosing. Um, Everybody just assumes that everyone else can figure it out, and then people eat them every day, and then they overwhelm themselves, and then they don't eat them enough, and then they don't fix themselves, and then
Uh-huh.
they eat too much, and like it's really messy. So my
Yeah.
experience in that was that nobody's talking about it,
Mm-hmm.
right? I had a hard time getting anyone to talk about it. I had to trial and error my way through.
Yeah.
So if anybody wants to talk about dosing, I will gladly talk about dosing with them.
Keith Bowering, Facebook, talk about microdosing.
Yeah, I get a lot of those messages actually.
So, well, good, good. Did you, when you came back, now, did you try to keep in touch with like the abstinence-based community? Like, was there a?
I've always kept in touch with them.
Mhm.
That's my peer group. That's a lot of my friends are there,
Yeah,
right? So like I've always stayed in touch. I just don't attend meetings.
yeah,
I feel like I have a very mixed message giving to the newcomer,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
I had to reach the point where am I embracing that I'm an abstinence based person,
yeah,
or am I embracing that if somebody's at a meeting and they're about to use, am I going to discourage them from using, or am I going to
yeah,
encourage them to use safely,
yeah.
right?
And that's something that I've been sort of coming to my own realizations about over this past year. You know, because I like we were talking before the show, and I said my opinions change daily.
All the time.
You know, and good. You know, my message is that it's okay to be different. It's
You
okay to
should
learn
evolve
new things.
with newly presented information, right?
Yeah. So, but it's sort of softened my tone as far as this is the right way and this is the wrong way. Because like, so the way I'm currently seeing it in this moment is that, you know, because when we first talked about your opinions of you going into the rooms and presenting this misconception, I was like, well, but people should know that there's this other modality. But maybe it's that if people are going into those rooms, they are seeking abstinence, and we should support that
Hmm.
in whatever way we
Yeah,
can.
like
And
I don't want to be the one to discourage them from
yeah,
seeking that abstinence,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
But also, I couldn't live with myself if they went out and used poorly, and then like I
yeah.
could have prevented that. You know what
Yeah,
I
yeah,
mean,
you
right?
not saying the things that you
Yeah,
said,
like the,
you know, and of course we all have to take ownership of our own decisions. I mean, if somebody heard something
absolutely.
and went out and used, of course, at the end of the day,
Yeah,
that's their decision.
it's their
But
decision to use.
still, I mean, to have that
But I had
boundary with
I had to
yourself.
decide, did I want to be the guy who's going to encourage them not to use and just try and white knuckle it, or am I going to be the guy who runs the impromptu needle exchange out of his garage for
Hmm.
people who can't access services,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Like who do I want to be?
yeah,
And I want to be that guy who runs the impromptu needle exchange out of his garage for people who can't access services.
yeah, yeah,
Um, there's a bunch of social workers that will come to me for supplies because they can't just go to the van or go to SDC or go to where the supplies are, right?
hmm
So
hmm yeah.
Everybody's human and everyone's got an issue.
Yeah. If you're just joining us now, there's a featured link at the bottom of the screen that'll show you a little bit more about this Sunday evening's guest that we've got coming on. You don't even have to leave this live stream. You can go and check it out right now and see if you want to check it out. And if you do, please tap going because that will let all of your friends know that you are interested in this and give them an opportunity to check it out as well. So it's a good way to help us spread the word. And also, today's live stream is the first sponsored Friday morning freestyle. It is sponsored by Stronger Together Canada, peer-led support groups by Moms Stop the Harm. We are going to learn a little bit more about them shortly. But for now, let's look at a couple of comments here. We've got Twinkle in the chat. What's up, Twinkle? Do the thing. Twinkle says, a few people in my pain community microdose for pain relief. I never have.
I'm familiar with people who say they use it for pain relief. That has never been my experience. I've never used it for pain relief. I just used it to rebuild some synapses in my brain and get out of my depression. And for that purpose, it was probably one of the best things I ever did for my mental health. And let me just like put a little tagline on this. I don't even like mushrooms. I don't. It's never been my favorite experience. I've always been the chemical person. I find mushrooms are very set and setting, and I have issues with overdoing it often. So it has never been my favorite. The fact that I chose it was interesting for me.
Got Dwayne Cameron in the chat. What's up, my friend? We were just on the river this weekend, Dwayne and I. He's definitely showing me how to wake skate. Dwayne says, I didn't know I could hit a meeting at Ness.
At 12 noon every day of the festival, from Thursday to Sunday, they are available in the second field at the Safe Haven.
And you facilitate that?
Yeah, we as a group, our team facilitates it. Yeah.
As a group. Now,
I have brought on, it's not just me who does all this work. I brought people in and recruited people out of my friends group and people that I know come to festivals. And so like I'm building a team, but I'm the front person.
It's interesting because you would think with the way the conversation has gone over the past years about harm reduction and abstinence and recovery community and not recovery community, you know how that is. We don't need to go into details, but when you go to a festival in a what I would consider a harm reduction capacity, what is traditionally known as harm reduction, and you start offering 12-step fellowship at the same space, do you ever think that perhaps people that may not want that community to know that they're using substances might be like steered away from that because of the 12-step presence?
I don't think so. I think it's a small group, and then we're trying to engage them and make them feel more welcome, right? We also, like Ness Creek also offers sober camping, which we also facilitate. We call it camp recovery because we didn't like I forget what the last term was, but we just went with that. And then we have like a blurb about how we just support all styles of recovery. And then, in fact, we've actually got a workshop. We call it Alternative Paths to Recovery, where you discuss all the different styles of recovery, whether it's completely abstinent based, or if you're an AA or an NA or a well-briety or whatever. We
Cali
discuss
sober.
all those different things. And then we also discuss about being California sober, right? Like, that's what it is, right? I technically fall under the California sober, right?
And that's gaining traction too.
It is, yeah.
It really is, and again, it's causing controversy and drama and stuff in some communities. But tell us about your experience with that, like when you decided to give that a try.
So I'm very big on like the universe will present itself to me, and I just sort of roll with the punches. So I was in recovery. I'm depressed. I'm struggling. Everything is going poorly. I've done multiple step work. I've done all of the things that recovery asks, right? I've done all these things. And I'm like, I'm still broken from my job. I'm still broken from all these things. What do I do? So I went to the doctor. And the doctor was like, I want to put you on SSRIs. And I was like, no, thanks. I am aware of what an SSRI cycle looks like. I know what it's like when they have to amp them up and amp them down and how people react and how poorly they go. I've been on this earth for 50 years and I've been involved in drugs since I was 12, right? Whether it was using, not using, or advocating for safer use of,
Mm-hmm.
always drugs, right?
Yeah.
So it was like, what do I do? Um, and then I started looking at CBD, and I started looking at weed, and I started looking at all the different things that I hadn't actually got to the point where I was consuming weed.
Mm-hmm.
But I was working a trade show for my former security job, and it was a Harvest Cup. So it was a big weed trade show.
Mm-hmm.
And I won a door prize. I put in $2. I won a door prize.
Yeah.
I got dab rigs, I got edibles, I got flour, growing supplies, you
Wow.
fucking name it. It was like almost $4,000 worth of everything.
Uh-huh.
And if that wasn't the universe telling me, hey, maybe this is what you need to look
You
at,
should get high.
I was like, okay, this is what I'm looking at, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But it also gave me the opportunity to dial in my agenda of like what works for me, what doesn't, right? I'm not a fan of edibles.
Mm-hmm.
I don't mind them. I will partake in small quantities, but they are not a daily thing,
Mm-hmm.
right? Me and my wife fight about the smell of the weed all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care about it. She is bothered by it.
Mm-hmm.
She's like, eat edibles. I'm like, I don't want to just fuck up my whole day, right?
See, I don't know anything about edibles. Like I've never been
Oh,
down that
they
road.
act more of a like a psychotropic, and you can,
Psychotropic. What's
yeah,
that?
like the way you process them in your gut creates more like you can sidetrack your whole day off an edible.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas like you smoke a joint, 20 minutes, I'm ready to go drive and go do what I need to do, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Hmm. So you mentioned talking about all these different modalities at a festival, at a hippie festival.
Yeah.
You know that it's such a great thing that you go there in a capacity to reduce the harms, and you bring all of these other tools with you.
Yeah.
Um,
I'm not anti abstinent based recovery
Yeah.
by any means.
And
If you want to improve your life,
Yeah.
a thorough and honest set of steps is
Yeah.
the way to do it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like it is. To take a year, even if you just take a year and like at the end of the year, do the set of steps, your
Mhm.
life will be different.
Mm-hmm.
Right? But nobody wants to, they either white knuckle it and then don't do it, or
Mhm.
they don't put the honest work in. Right?
Mm-hmm. I was I forget, I think it was a few weeks ago on one of our Sunday night streams. One of the guests, not one of the guests, one of the viewers commented, and it was just like straight out, everybody should do the steps.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's got nothing to do with addiction or anything. Like these are just like a great way to implement some fundamentals into your life that will help it be better. That will
Yeah.
help you be a better person and help you make a better relationship with the world around you. You know, and that seems to be coming out more and more. I'm hearing that it's just, you know, even the way the conversation is being presented in the public eye, I don't think that's how it's actually going down. And that's
No.
like how most things go, right? They get sensationalized
Yeah.
and they get, you know,
The-
we're going to
the
pit this
15-second
side against
clip.
this side and we're going
Yeah.
to put it in the news and, you know, but the more people I talk to, and especially more recently, nobody is against abstinence. Nobody is really
No.
against certain harm reduction
I
strategies.
my problem with abstinence is it's a very hard modality
Mm-hmm.
to actually like enact it and live it and do the things.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, I got real broken, but that's part of my career and part of like where I was just at, right? It had nothing to do with the abstinence per se.
Mm-hmm.
It just, the THC really levels my mood. I'm not as angsty as I can be, because I can get pretty spicy sometimes.
Well, can't we all? Yeah. So let's take a quick break here. We're going to hear a few words from Stronger Together Canada, and we will be back.
We've watched our children walk away. We've felt hopeless, powerless. We are moms, stop the harm. We are not hopeless. We are not powerless. Stronger Together Canada is a national network of peer-led support groups to help navigate these challenges. If you're coping with a child's substance use, reach out to www.holdinghopecanada.org. If you've lost a child to drug poisoning or overdose, www.healingheartscanada.org. We're here to help, and we are stronger together.
All right. Stronger Together Canada has been one of our most longest standing supporters. We're very grateful for everything they do. If you want to learn more about them, you can also find them on our website, www.hardknockstalks.com. And spoiler alert, we are dropping brand new merch later today. So that is exciting. We haven't dropped new merch for like 2 years. So make sure you keep an eye on the page. It's fresh. It's designed by a local artist right here in Saskatoon. And we're really excited about it. So let's talk about some of your experiences drug checking now, and also about a bit about the policy. Now, from what I understand, and we'll just jump into it here, you have some permissions, like
Permissions, yes.
yeah, that
Yeah.
you can, like, when these drugs are in your possession, when you're performing the
Like, let me just clarify. As a drug checker, at no point do I come in contact with drugs. That's part of the way the exemption is laid out. Not supposed to, anyways. It's everybody puts their drugs in the cup, and then you just do your thing, right?
So unpack that. What do you mean they put their drugs in the cup?
So right now, the way it sits, we are only allowed to do testing strips.
Okay.
So we do this immense amount of work for this exemption, and we have very little payoff on the ground because we just don't have $50,000 lasers to bring out into the field. But that's the goal, right?
Lasers.
Lasers. That's where we want to be. We want to be
We
at
want the lasers.
We want the lasers in the field.
Yeah.
The
And
first time,
you could call your tent the laser show.
I walked into the consumption site and they showed me the laser and I was like, can I take it to a field? Actually, can I take it to 5 fields? And my boss was like, no, not this year.
So by laser, you mean the mass spectrometer?
The spectrometer, yeah.
Okay, cool.
FTIR is a 4-year something.
Nah.
Yeah. Anyways, if we were operating like they do in BC, we would have a bunch of these and we'd have all these trained up people to operate them. So far, it's just me and I don't have the full training and we just got the laser, so we're not bringing it into the field. That being said, if you have drugs you want checked, you can reach out to me on Facebook and I will gladly facilitate getting them scanned for you. That is the way we've been doing it for now, because it's weird bringing people that aren't accessing services into the consumption site while people who are accessing services are there. So we just kind of discourage that, and we don't have an open public time yet.
Yeah. So it's by appointment only?
It's not even by appointment. It's just been like, here, you bring me a sample and I'll put it on the spectrometer and get your results the next business day is what we've been doing so far.
Okay. So not like, it's not as fast as you would like it to be, right?
No,
like,
no.
I mean, if I went and
ideally we would be doing it in real time for people.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then you could see, but the thing about the consumption site is when you bring in, we'll call them civilians. You bring a civilian in, they want to know about the system. They want to they tour the site. They want to ask the questions.
Interesting.
And it's like, it's a longer period of time, right?
Yeah.
By the way we're doing it right now, like if I get the sample, it's a 15-minute process. We've got it scanned and I can send off results, right?
Yeah.
But we don't have to explain it to anybody, and we just end up with end game results.
Yeah. So what is that? And we don't need to go into like who's using this service, but like what is the most common demographic that like calls you up and says, "Hey, I'd like to get these checked." Like, is it the daily user or is it the weekend warrior?
I've been tagging in a lot of the recreational from the festival thing, right? Because this is my 3rd year doing this project, right? When we do Electric Sky at the end of the season, that'll be the 3rd time we've done Electric Sky, which is great. So we're growing with them as they grow, and they were the first ones to get on board. Like, I originally created the project for Base in the Bush, but I ended up doing Electric Sky first because of the pandemic. So basically, essentially, our province has the rights and the capabilities to give us an urgent public health needs order. All of the provinces have received this. Drug checking and all those things fall underneath that urgent public health needs order. So I tried, as sayno.org, to apply for one. Literally, what happened was they announced that they were going to allow drug checking
Mm-hmm.
on August 3rd. On August 4th, they received a fully fleshed out application for an urgent public health needs order
Mm-hmm.
for the end of that month. So, like, August 4th, they got it. The first festival was August 28th. They're like, it's too rushed. We can't do it. I was like, okay. And they're like, we'll talk next year. So the next year comes up. Again, ready to
Did you go
apply.
anyways?
Oh yeah, I went anyways. We did harm reduction supplies and we did all the things and
Any trouble?
no, not at that one.
Mm-hmm.
It was well, there was more COVID issues than there was like
Okay.
drug related issues, right?
Ain't
Because
that
it's still
interesting?
in the pandemic and like technically it was an outbreak, but people didn't report. So then like
Yeah.
but like they were never on the site at the same time. So like, are we in a gray area? I don't know.
Yeah.
But anyway, so the second day we had planned on going out into the community at the festival and being like, hey, tell us about drug checking because that's part of the exemption process, right?
Okay.
It's like Perry Harm when they went and they consulted the entire community, knocked on everybody's doors. It's the same thing, right?
Mhm.
So the plan was we're going to do this. We're going to go and we're going to hit it up and we're just going to get everybody's opinions. Do you want drug checking at your festivals? Yes, no. How do you feel about this?
Door-to-door canvassing.
Essentially, yeah.
Okay.
And then we had a COVID issue. So then instead of sending people out with clipboards and hand them around, it was very much like, hey, we're going to offer COVID testing. So we just helped facilitate COVID testing for the rest of that day. We did that, and then that was all we did that day.
Mm-hmm.
Hand out supplies and help them with the COVID testing. So
Mhm.
it kind of like we just had to adapt. A lot of the festival projects has been adapting.
Mm-hmm. Such is life.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like last year for Base in the Bush, we rolled out on Wednesday. We did a whole bunch of admin work. Thursday was supposed to be all set up, and we just sat and watched the blizzard.
Mm.
We watched it blizzard, and then we were like, what do we do? And then like we pulled off a logistical nightmare, and we moved the entire festival to a different site where the truck could get access, and then we set up and ended up doing it at this different location.
Mm-hmm.
After that, I feel like I can pretty much do anything.
Yeah. Lived
Any
experience.
curveball they throw at me at a festival, I can adapt to nowadays.
Yeah. Yeah. So tell me, what does that do for your own journey? Like and I asked you before the show, I'm like, do you identify as a person in recovery? And you said, absolutely. Now you said, I think you mentioned there was 4 things.
4 things:
Okay.
alcohol,
Mm-hmm.
opioids,
Mm-hmm.
cocaine, and amphetamines.
Mm-hmm.
If I am not partaking in any of those 4 substances, I still consider myself a person in recovery.
Mm-hmm. Got Ashley Robin Gray Eyes saying, hi, Keith.
Hello.
She's also saying smart guy. I think she's talking about you. Maybe not.
Yeah.
Maybe me.
Could be either.
Yeah. Thanks for the comment, Ashley.
Before we get sidetracked, should we continue on this exemption piece on like what,
Oh, yeah.
what that looks like?
Yeah.
Okay, so what ended up happening is I applied for the exemption. They were like, we're going to work with you. And then like 2 days before Base in the Bush, they were like, no. And they just denied it.
Mm-hmm.
Luckily, by that point, I had partnered with Prairie Harm Reduction. So they ended up carrying all the heavy weight. They got the exemption. They did all the things. So last summer, we had the only federally written drug checking exemption they've ever done. They were like, we don't do this. We gave the provinces. Our province is very much like, we'll give you drug checking supplies, but we won't condone you using them. That's basically the vibe that our government gives.
Okay.
So they supply us with test strips. They own spectrometers, but on like the health authority does. But the government doesn't actually approve of any of it, and they won't. It's like the consumption site.
Do they just
It's like a moral line that they've just decided they're not going to support.
like they can't support it on paper.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
but
like the health authority bought 4 spectrometers, and
Yeah.
like so there's an operational spectrometer here,
Mm-hmm.
and then there's one in Regina that's operational
Mhm.
currently at the Neo-Yotan Friendship Center.
Mm-hmm. Cool. So you did get it in time to go to that.
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
I was literally at Ness Creek, ready to talk to the promoter and
Ready
be
to
like,
do it
"We
either
didn't
way."
get it," but she was in a conversation with someone. We're speaking of Saskatchewan,
Kathy.
Kathy.
Thanks for asking.
I only work in Saskatchewan with this project.
Yeah.
I was literally standing there waiting to talk to her to be like, we didn't get it. And I got a text that said, you got it. And I was like, all right. But we were already second day in the festival.
Mm-hmm.
So by the time we announced to the crowd on Friday night that we were operational, we only had Saturday to test,
Mm.
right? Because nobody's testing on Sundays. It's like you can be there, but nobody's actually going to come test on their way home. They've already done it if they're going to do it.
Yeah. Huh.
But we made history. That was the first legal, legitimate drug checking. So essentially, what happens is when they come into the tent and we agree on the waiver, we had a written waiver. I hope it's verbal this year. They just had to write. I would tell them write a name, and they would write whatever name. There was a lot of Toms and a lot of Daves, and quite a few Mikes.
For any of the researchers out there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But essentially what happens, it's the same as with this consumption site. So when we're in that space, in that time and space, after the waiver is done, their drugs are no longer considered illegal and they cannot be charged for possession.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So the exemption is still the 56-1. It's still the same exemption as consumption site. It's just a subdivision of it.
Mm. You ever get people like come into the tent and like staying close to the tent so they can use their drugs legally?
I have one friend, he rolls through and he'll help me get stats. So he'll come through with his like 3 different substances like 2 or 3 times.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And we'll test him every time and he'll do bumps of cocaine and because that's as close as you get to legal cocaine every time. So like 1 for the test and then 1 for me, 1 for the test and 1 for me is the way he goes. So
how much drugs, or how much of the substances that you're testing typically gets destroyed in the process?
With the test strips, all of it, whatever amount of substance they put into the cup ends up destroyed because you put it in liquid.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
then essentially what they've done is they took pee strips.
Yeah.
So if your mom thought you were doing fentanyl and made you do a pee test, it's the same science, the same things. They say urinalysis on the back of them.
Oh, really?
You just put them in water, right? And then it'll give you a yes or no for fentanyl. There's a benzos, and then there'll be eventually, hopefully, we'll get some of them xylene ones or
I was
whatever.
just gonna say, are you testing for trank dope yet?
Well, we're testing for whatever we can test for, right?
Mm-hmm. The spectrometer will show the xylazine, right?
Yes.
But your test strips won't.
No.
No.
But if we get the xylene ones, then we'll be okay.
Yeah.
They're new though. They're new on the market.
Yeah.
I just found a Canadian distributor. The health authority doesn't have any.
Mm-hmm.
I've been trying to track them for about 6 months,
Mm-hmm.
or maybe even longer. I even reached out to Rapid Response and was like, "Yo,
Mm-hmm.
I fully believe we've had it here. I don't believe it is a reoccurring issue for us at this point.
Trank?
That particular trank.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you haven't seen
We
any
haven't
burns
encountered
or
any
anything
here
like that?
yet. No.
No. Okay. For those,
But that's not to say that it hasn't been here
No, of
and
course.
it isn't here.
Yeah.
It's just we haven't actually had any. We're new to this, right?
Yeah. So for anyone who might not know, xylazine is an adulterant that they're finding in heavy amounts down south in the States, particularly around Philadelphia.
Yeah. And Baltimore's got a real issue with it too.
Yeah. And what's happening is that they're using it to puff up the fentanyl, typically, right? And it's a horse tranquilizer.
I'm not too sure what its classification
Yeah,
is, but
it's a sedative or a
it's
tranquilizer. But in any case, one of the very serious side effects of this adulterant is that you can break out in these very serious.
You develop necrosis around the injection site.
Not even around the injection. Well,
Like,
it can happen
yeah,
there, but
that's
also
not where
it
it'll
pops
stem
up,
from. Yeah.
It pops up all over the place. Like I've seen pictures of the injection site being on the arm, but it's popping up on someone's leg or on someone's forearm. It's terrifying stuff. So yeah, I'm glad that you're not really seeing it much here. Long may that continue. Yeah. So, are we done with the policy stuff now?
Yeah,
Is there more?
we can move on if there doesn't seem any questions about it.
Yeah. Oh, what do we got
We're
here?
in Saskatchewan. That's what state we're in, Tara.
Yeah, Tara Lynn, thanks for asking. Ashley Robbins says, I met Keith at PHR and didn't realize how much harm reduction worked. How much harm reduction work he does. Truly admirable. Yes, and that's why we will probably keep bringing Keith back again and again.
So this is like I had said, this festival project, and I just refer to it as a festival project. I haven't named it anything. it started as just like a thought. Because in the early 2000s, when I was raving
Your
really hard,
thought.
I was just like, why don't we have more rave safe? Why don't we have these things? I always wondered, right? Like, but back in the day, it was like, oh, are these pills any good? Well, they're dirty.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I can guarantee they're dirty because they're press pills, right?
Yeah.
Like, but other than that, we didn't have any like grasp on how to facilitate anything, right? And then I looked at reagents. I was like, eh.
Then you what? Sorry.
I was looking at reagent testing.
Uh-huh.
I was just going to become a guerrilla reagent tester.
Uh-huh.
But they are very interpretive, and I'm not a fan.
Yeah.
I watched 1,000 different reactions, and I couldn't distinguish between any of them.
Yeah.
I was just like, I'm done with this. Like, let's move on into bigger, higher tech things. So it was always like a pie in the sky, like dream, right?
So even when you were actively using, you saw a need for this service. This is a
Yeah.
long.
Well, here's the fun thing about me when I was using.
Uh-huh.
Before I'd ever heard of harm reduction, I was doing all of these things, right? I remember back in the day, I was selling morphine and meth in the hood, and I was running a needle exchange. Throw your old one away, I'll give you a new one with your new product, right?
Okay.
Because I was just tired of watching people trying to inject with syringes with no numbers on them or bent tips or like dull, like they're just causing more problems. So I would just send someone to Shoppers, buy me a box of syringes, and I would just do this.
So was there an entrepreneurial
No,
thing that just
no, it was just like I just naturally fell into it.
okay.
Right? There was no terminology, and back then there was no needle exchange.
Yeah.
Right? Like if you wanted needles, you had to identify as a diabetic and go to Shoppers and be like, "Yo, I'm a diabetic. Please give me a box."
Did they ever question people?
All the time,
Really?
all the time. It was all like, so we always had a rule back then, and it was the dealer doesn't go and buy the supplies. Like we're buying the supplies, but we're not going into the store and being like, "Yo, I need a box of 500 syringes," right?
Yeah.
You send someone to do that. You know, I'll give you a point, go buy me a box, right?
Huh.
But I was doing these things before I ever had even heard of harm reduction or any of the concepts of it, because we didn't have a needle exchange till 2005.
You said that it was like an unspoken thing. The dealer doesn't buy it.
Yeah, it was the
needles.
same, like the dealer doesn't go into the vinyl exchange and buy all the bags.
Yeah.
He's not the guy who's going in buying 10,000 bags. You
Right.
send someone to do that for you.
So was this a common thread? Did you know other people who were also selling that were
Yes.
doing the same thing?
We all
going
did
and
the
buying
same thing.
Needles
Yeah.
and
Yeah. Well, less so with the needles, but like the bags was the
Yeah.
predominant one, right?
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
everybody needed to buy the bags, and there was really only one place to get them then. Nobody was on the whole, like, we're just going to order them from Amazon train,
Yeah,
right?
Amazon
Like,
wasn't a thing yet.
yeah. So you had to do everything in person, and you had to know where they were.
So how has this affected your own journey now? Let's go back to where you're at. You know, when like the first time that you actually pulled this off, the first time you showed up and you were drug checking and all of these substances that you used to use are coming right in your face now. What was that like for you?
That was fine. I'm okay
No
with that.
desire at all.
No,
Not even a little
no,
tiny bit. Even
no.
if no one was listening right now, you'd say the same thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
So here's the thing about some of the drugs I'm seeing. Most of the drugs I see at the festivals, ketamine,
Yeah.
and cocaine are the predominant. That's those two. Everyone really likes sky trains, they call them.
What's that?
That's where you take some cocaine and some ketamine, you put them together, and you take the sky train. So everybody really likes those. So those are the two predominant powders, and then you see MDMA, but like rarely ever is anybody coming with meth. There's a lot of stigma around like meth and opioids and things like that, right?
Now let's hang on a sec. Unpack it. What do you mean? There's a lot of stigma around meth and opioids, like in the festival.
In the
community?
festival scene, yeah. Like
Okay.
the opioid users are very tight-lipped about their opioid use.
Yeah.
Because they don't want their friends to know, like, oh, you got to have it, right?
Oh, okay.
So I've been working really hard to break down these barriers. Like I will talk about drugs with anybody at any point, right? You want to talk drugs? Let's do it, right? Because everybody's stigmatized, and I want them not to be stigmatized, right? So the opioid users are realizing, like, because the only reason I'm finding out about opioid use at festivals is through naloxone training.
Oh,
right? Because then if I'm doing a one-on-one naloxone training and somebody is the opioid user, they'll be very hush-hush. They'll be like, I just need to have this kit. Okay, great. Everybody needs to have a kit these days. If you
Yeah.
don't have a kit, get a fucking kit.
Yeah.
Everybody needs to
Yeah.
have that ability. Exactly.
I got a kit over there too.
Right.
Yeah.
So what I found is when I'm doing those one-on-one trainings with those people,
Mhm.
they'll whisper, "Hey, yeah, like I kind of use opioids on methadone," or I'm like, but they don't want anybody else to know,
Mhm.
right? So secretly, I'm finding out who was doing what drugs, right? So I
Mhm.
kind of know, and now they're getting a little more open. They're a little more open. Oh yeah, they're like, hey, I guess I do methadone because I had an issue or whatever, right? Like they're
Mhm.
becoming more open to the conversations,
Mhm.
which with their polluted drug supply, like I would hate to find out about somebody who was just shooting fentanyl in a tent and didn't tell their friends,
Yeah.
right? Like
Yeah, it's dangerous.
it's dangerous.
Yeah.
So I'm very upfront about the drug conversations.
Mhm.
My first electric sky, my first one out, I came up with this plan and I thought it was amazing, but nobody wanted to access it.
What was
So
the
what I
plan?
did was, so if you go to any little shit town in Saskatchewan, they have a Chinese restaurant.
Yeah.
And you walk in that Chinese restaurant, there'll be a neon poster board with a picture of fried rice and a
Mhm.
picture of the special number 3 or
Mhm.
whatever it is,
Mhm.
right? So I did that.
That's true.
I absolutely did that. I took pictures. I put them on a plate and I
Uh-huh.
put out all the needle
You put 'em on
supplies
a plate?
and I took a picture of them
Uh-huh.
and I put out the pipes and I took a picture of them on a plate. So just like a Chinese food restaurant.
Yeah.
So essentially all you had to do was walk up to the desk and go, I'll have a number 1.
Oh,
And they would give
wow.
you an envelope with
The number
nothing
1.
written on it, but all your supplies were in an undisclosed thing. So nobody actually knew what services you were accessing.
Uh-huh. I
So
mean,
you
if
can-
they looked, they could like super sleuth it out, but
But all of them were under the table. So nobody really knew. Right?
okay.
You just had to say, I want a number 1. I'll hand you an envelope and it's got all your rigs and everything you need inside this envelope.
Huh.
Discreet.
Uh-huh.
Discreet as shit.
Yeah.
Nobody accessed.
Really?
Not a one.
Hmm.
So what I did do is I left a bunch of syringes out into a bin on just the general table, and they all went out the door.
Hmm.
So now I don't oversee my supply tables at all. They are there. Everything is free. It says free stuff in big huge letters on the poster board, and help yourself. Take what you need.
Hmm.
Right? I put out nasals. I put out injection kits. Even though the injection kits aren't very like well received, and a lot of the ravers are like, why would we have that? A lot of them are doing intramuscular ketamine, but not talking about it.
Hang on now. The naloxone kits.
No, like I'll put them out too, yeah. But
You're
like
okay. You're just talking rigs and stuff.
just rigs and stuff.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
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 Huh. Wow. Oh, and we've got Aaron. Aaron, glad you could make it today, man. Thanks for joining. Aaron says, I salute you both. So much information for the people. Yes, yes, and that's why we bring Keith around and people not unlike Keith. So where else can we go, man? What else have we touched on?
I don't know. Where are we at? Well, you got a little bit of time.
Yeah.
Um
Tell us about your efforts to bring the lasers to the festival site.
to the festival site.
Yes.
Well, that's not happening this year.
For anybody who's just tuning in, the lasers are the mass spectrometers. They're like the granddaddy of all testing equipment, and
Actually, they're second tier.
what's the top?
The top tier is the mass spec. So like the FTIR is just an infrared laser.
Yeah.
Whereas the mass spec is like a much more involved process
Okay.
that requires scientists. So what happens is they take drugs, say we get this pack of meth, and they test it at the mass spec
Mhm.
level, and then they can take that result and put it into a library. So then we can shoot our laser at it, and then our library has a list of like 900 different ketamine, different
Things.
subdivisions of
Yeah.
ketamine, right? Parafluoral and whatever, right?
Yeah.
And then we have a pharmacy library, and we have all these other libraries.
Mhm.
So we shoot it at, and then we get this spectra. It goes like this, and
Mhm.
then we can compare, and we overlay ones that are third tier tested, and we overlay them, and then we compare, right? And then if they match up super well,
Mhm.
then we know like this is just ketamine, and then we'll do the test strips on top
Mhm.
just to rule out. Because often what happens with the spectrometer, any of the substance that is under 5% doesn't read.
Mm.
And more often than not, that is the amount of fentanyl that is in the substance.
Mm-hmm.
We had some fentanyl that read at 10 to 15% on a mixer analysis, which is unheard of here.
Mm-hmm.
We had not encountered that at any
That's
point.
dangerously.
That's super dangerous. Yeah.
Pure. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
So
crazy.
generally fentanyl is like the smallest amount in
Yeah.
that. What we are finding is dimethyl sulfone is very popular.
What
So
the
I
heck?
don't know if you remember back in the day, the meth users used to buff the meth with MSM.
Oh yeah.
That's dimethyl sulfone.
Yeah.
So they cook that into the fentanyl,
Okay.
which is fine if
Yeah.
you're injecting it or eating it.
Yeah.
But nobody's doing that. They're all smoking it.
Yeah.
And when you smoke dimethyl sulfone, you get like real bad skin and it gets real greasy and gross.
Really?
Yeah, that's why all the meth users used to have real bad skin and your teeth go bad and
Really?
you
Oh,
get
there you
these.
go.
Yeah,
Huh.
yeah. So
That's
that's
from MSM.
yeah, yeah.
Huh.
So
And
so now
that's
they're putting that in the fentanyl and everybody's smoking.
huh.
So
Wow.
when you see someone twirling now in Saskatoon,
Twirling,
like
smoking meth.
they're not smoking meth all the time. They're smoking fentanyl the same way.
Really?
It's the same way. So when you get to the myth of there's fentanyl in my weed, there could be fentanyl in your weed. But the fentanyl burns off at such a temperature that as soon as you ignite your weed, by the time the weed has ignited, the fentanyl has burned off.
So
You need a removed heat source.
so you're saying that people saying that maybe someone tragically overdosed from fentanyl while they were smoking a joint.
Yeah, that's like
That's not true.
propaganda.
Really?
Propaganda. The science doesn't match. The burning point of the fentanyl and the burning point of the weed are different.
Because there was a story, and I'm not sure how long ago it happened.
Yeah, I
Maybe
know.
you heard it
But there's
in
also
Alberta.
stories of policemen touching fentanyl and
Yeah.
collapsing, and
Yeah.
there's also like there's propaganda everywhere, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, Aaron in the chat again says, "Look at these two superheroes." Oh, me. Watch the ego, bro. Trying to help as many as possible, as they possibly can, being where they once were. Gotta tip your hat and recognize that there are angels trying to help. Well, I wouldn't go as far as saying that Keith and I are angels.
Maybe
but
angles.
angles, yeah. We're angling for something. Yeah. So, do you ever get people like when you go and you do these drug checking events? Do you ever get people like because you have other tools at the table there, like you mentioned, like Celebrate Recovery and whatever? Do you ever get people like coming and checking their drugs and seeing these other things available and then showing up for those things?
No, not really. So the only one festival that really pushes like the 12 step is Nest. They always have. We've always facilitated it, right?
Okay.
Um,
They push it. They're like, "Can
well,
you do
no,
this?"
like they want it,
Right.
right?
Okay.
So like last year we had someone come and he did an NA meeting, an AA meeting, and a Wellbriety.
Yeah.
Just to be diverse.
Yeah.
This year we're not sure what we're doing. This year we're going to do alternative paths to recovery again, and we have the sober camp. So I had someone reach out for Electric Sky, and he wanted to start a sober camp, and I was like, I will gladly facilitate that for you,
Mm-hmm.
but like I'm not going to facilitate it because for me, for the way that works is I work hard all summer long, right? Like last year in Nest Creek, I did 14-hour days for 5 days in a row.
You
And
did.
then I came home with COVID, and then I had like 5 days of COVID, and I had 3 days to prep for the next festival and out the door,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I'm not going to facilitate that. For me, that's my decompress, right? Like
Yeah.
I'm going to go off a little bit at that one.
Yeah.
Like I'm going to have some fun.
Yeah.
But I'm willing to do that at any festival if you can get the group. So this gentleman had reached out. We went back and forth. I fully supported him. He didn't want to do it by himself. He wants someone to get on board, but he doesn't know enough people. So he reached out to Shambhala and their Camp Clean Beats and like consulted with them. And now he's just going to come work for me at this next Electric Sky.
Mm.
So he can start building this portion.
Mm-hmm.
Great. I will fully support that portion.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just not going to be the one doing it.
So you just said something interesting to me. You said That's the one where I decompress. That's one where I have a little fun. What
Yeah.
does that look like to you? Like, you go to festivals? Do you partake? Like, do you?
I do a little bit, yeah.
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 What does that look
But
like?
I have to keep it in moderation, right? Because I'm the point of responsibility on the exemption. So
Okay.
like I can't just go and like I'm gonna do acid and run around for
Yeah.
all night long.
Yeah.
Because what if my midnight shift doesn't show up?
Right.
Right? So it's very much like I'm very much in work mode for the first 3 festivals.
Yeah.
Not to say that I'm not working the 4th one.
Yeah.
But I also will like once I
Go
know
and enjoy your life.
Yeah, once I know that everybody's that showed up for their shifts and I'm not like shorthanded,
Yeah.
great. I'll go have some fun on the Saturday night, right?
Awesome. Yeah.
Um,
All right. Cool, man.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming in today.
awesome.
Great talk.
Yeah, for
Where
sure.
can people find you?
Just on Facebook, Keith Bowering,
Mm-hmm.
or if you need naloxone training or anything like that, Keith at prairiehr.ca.
Awesome.
All the community naloxone training seem to come through my inbox, and I'm really knocking the out of the park these days.
Awesome. Okay. We'll let you go. We'll cap it off there.
Okay.
Make sure you check us out Sunday night. Link at the bottom of the screen. Tap that link. Tap going so you get a reminder. And that's it. Enjoy your weekend, everyone. Stay safe. Have some fun. Live your life. We'll see you Sunday night.